Thumbs up.
Oh, thumbs up, Connie. All right, welcome to our board meeting this evening. Today is Tuesday, October 6th, 2020. Ben, are we still good live streaming? We welcome those here in the room with us. It's good to see the room full, but not too full, so we can still spread out a little bit. And also welcome all of our viewers online. We're going to start this evening by indicating who is here, starting with Todd.
Todd Zenker.
Terry Bodden.
Connie Burgess.
Martin Bates, Superintendent.
Nicole McDermott.
Chris Wynn.
Connie Anderson.
Karen Winder, Board President. Thanks to everybody for being here tonight. We're going to begin with our pledge given by Angie Rasmussen, who is, oh, just kidding. I skipped over. We're going to start with introductions first, and then Angie, I am so sorry. That is my fault. I apologize, but you are on it.
Well,
She's ready.
We kind of did introductions when we did, so that's what, we haven't done
It's
introductions
okay.
for a while, but we're glad to be
It's like
back.
brand new again.
From the Region 5 PTA, we have some folks here from, please stand up and tell us who you are. Welcome. Thanks for being with us this evening. Thank you. From the Granite Education Foundation, Cindy Formeller. I know Carrie Johnson is participating by distance, so Carrie, we're all waving right now, aren't we? Yes.
Hi, Carrie, are you there?
Oh, now we really are all waving. So thank you, Carrie. From the Granite Education Association, Mike, I saw Mike. Have anybody with you? Very good, welcome. Thanks for being with us. From the office professionals, I think I saw Teresa. Welcome, glad you're here. From the Granite Educational Support Professionals Association, Mike Memmott. Welcome, thanks for being with us. From the Granite Association of School Administrators, Terry Roylance. Terry, welcome. And then Garrett Muse, if you'd come introduce those administrators who are here on assignment.
Good evening, board members and superintendency. We would like to introduce our administrators here by assignment. We'd like to begin with Eric Bailey, who is the assistant principal at Hunter High School. Mary Basso, who is the principal at John F. Kennedy Junior High School. Sherry Branch, who is the assistant principal at Hunter High School. Brenda Burns, who is principal at Woodstock Elementary. We have David Everett, who is assistant principal at Copper Hills and Gerald Wright Elementary. Tyson Fawcett, who is the assistant principal at Kearns High School. Matthew Graham, who is the principal at Arcadia Elementary. Christopher Griffith, who is principal at Granite Park Junior High School. Heather Handy, who is the assistant principal, intern at Oline Walker Elementary. Jamie Hutchins, who is the assistant principal at Taylorsville High School. Lisa McDonald, who is the assistant principal intern at Calvin Smith Elementary. Becky Monson, who is principal at Thomas Backus Elementary. And Ofa Now, assistant principal intern at Eisenhower Junior High School. Angie Rasmussen, who is the assistant principal at Diamond Ridge and Hunter Elementaries. April Reynolds, who is the assistant principal at West Valley Elementary. Jason Roseball is the associate director of the YES program. John Paul Sorensen, who is the principal at Neil Armstrong Academy. Linda Tierney, the assistant principal at Skyline High School. Melissa Trujillo, who is the assistant principal at Binion and Pioneer Elementaries. And Scott Woolridge, who is the assistant principal at Kearns High School. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Muse.
All right, thank you so much. I'm out of practice to have people actually being here at our meeting, so we appreciate all of our administrators and the wonderful work they're doing. Angie, now if you'll come forward, I apologize. Angie Rasmussen is going to lead us in the pledge.
Thank you, everybody. Please stand and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What a wonderful thing to be able to do the pledge. And it's been a long time since, as board members, we've heard the crowd behind us repeating the pledge. And so thanks again for being here tonight. We're going to turn the time over to Ben, who's going to introduce our reverends from Cottonwood High.
So thank you, board president and board members and superintendency. We're getting back in the swing of things with a new normal. And so instead of having a live reverence, we actually have a video presentation from one of our musicals. And we were testing it out before, and I'm really excited to present this amazing clip from Cottonwood High Theater. They will be presenting, and this is in parentheses on my notes, hopefully, playing on November 19th through the 23rd, the Cottonwood High Theater, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, directed by Adam Wilkins, starring as Joseph, Hunter Oliphant, who is going to be presenting a song for us, and the camera work was done by Aurora Laird. So we're going to go ahead and see if we can make this magic happen.
President Winder, we have a couple of elected officials here. Perhaps
See
for
that. Welcome.
for our elected official participation time, Senator Kathleen Reeby and Mayor Christy Overson. Perhaps if they wanted to say it.
Yeah, Kathleen, you want to come up first? Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me here today. I have a very unique experience that some of you who know me have experienced. My change through this career that I've had at Granite. As we work to bring our communities back to full speed, I can tell you that our schools are leading the way. I was trying to go to some town halls today, and most of them are still online. So congratulations on leading the way on being here. So that's a big step for a lot of us. Our children have risen to the occasion by wearing masks and distance learning. And as I walk through my schools, it's amazing to see how seamlessly these people have done these things. Our parents that are stressed about being here or being in person or online, our schools have risen to this occasion, and they've differentiated their instruction and they've differentiated their experiences for each of those parents. And the parents have come around to gaining their trust and feeling good about being at school. Our board members have struggled tremendously, just like I have, with emails and phone calls and gnashing of teeth, but it's been overwhelming to see us all come together and meet the needs of our communities. Our teachers have been checking in person and distance learning, sanitizing, and checking on those lost kids that we've talked about at the beginning of the season. So it's been incredible to see how many connections we've made with those kids that just aren't really coming. Our secretaries, who are the first face of all of our schools, have really worked hard to make sure that our kids are safe, maintaining the payroll, maintaining the paperwork, and operating the schools and keeping us all safe. Our janitors that have done those extra duties and have merged overnight with triple the work, quadruple the work, but doing it with still helping us every day. We appreciate the Friday that you've given us to catch up. I was just talking to some teachers today, and they were saying that that really has made a big difference in their lives, and it's really given them a chance to bring it back together and come back on Monday with a happiness. But the real reason I'm here today is the technology and the information systems people. These guys are the glue that have brought us all together. Our whole school and our whole state has moved from an in-person experience to online, and these technology people have done a tremendous job. When I was on the state school board, I advocated for every extra dollar we had to go to our rurals and try to bring broadband out to our rurals, and that really made a big difference for something that we couldn't foresee. So with our computer engineers, our hardware techs, our printer people, our information systems, our gradebook people, our administrators, and our district staff people who are helping us to get into Math and Wonders and Utah Compose and all those programs we use, I want to give them a huge shout out. And if there's anything that we can do to support those technology people by keeping them at their jobs, making them happy at their jobs, throwing some extra resources their way, that would really make it a lot better for all of us. They have been a tremendous asset to this whole experience. So that was the real reason I'm here tonight. But I'd like to tell you that all of us, all throughout the school district, have stepped up and done a great job. So thank you so much for all the work you do, and thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, Superintendent Bates, President Winder, and board members. It's delightful to be with you. I've missed our Tuesday evening get-togethers. And I'm glad to know that I still dominate the mayor's attendance here at your meetings. And I just want to give you a heartfelt thanks. What a roller coaster 2020 has been. And it's anytime anybody asks me, what about my child? When is school going to open? What about safe walking routes? It's my delight to say, I don't know. Let's ask the district. One less thing I have to think about, but thank you so much. And I know that your diligent effort changes not just daily, but hourly and sometimes every minute. So from Taylorsville City, we just want to say thank you so much. We appreciate what you're doing. We feel the support in our community and hope that you feel the city support in all that you're doing. And I'm glad to be back. Good to see you all.
Thank you, Mayor, for being here.
Might I just
Yep, go
say
ahead.
something? Senator, you said something about Fridays and as a catch-up day or as planning for the next weekday. There is a persistent rumor that we're looking at stopping those. That is not true. For this school year, we anticipate those being in place throughout this school year. And so anybody you hear a rumor from to the contrary, I'm hoping there are, Ben, 7,000 people listening right now, and that's not a real.
No more emails.
Well,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I had it one today, and this is a consistent message as I visited schools and also reading emails that this rumor has just taken off like wildfire. So just to reiterate, Dr. Bates, our board is not entertaining any motion or any plan on taking away those Friday distance/prep days. And as long as dual modality teaching exists, you're going to see those Fridays remain the same. So hopefully that puts that all to rest. So for those who are here hearing it and online, please share it. Word of mouth can be great if it's the correct information. So that's what we want out there.
guys, thank you.
Okay.
Nope, that's it.
All right, we don't have anyone signed up for citizen participation this evening, correct, Ben? Okay. So we'll move on to our consent agenda. Board members have had this large agenda actually this time since Thursday, and so I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda and a second on the table. Any discussion, questions, or concerns? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Awesome.
Yep.
In that consent agenda that we just approved was included a 1% bonus for all contract employees and a $100 bonus for all hourly employees. This is done from our board. This was not negotiated with any groups. This is our board giving the biggest thank you as a small token. We wish we could do more, but as a small token of our appreciation for just surviving the craziest quarter, for making it through, whether you're an administrator, a teacher, a custodian, bus driver, secretary, anybody, right? And so we, as a board, felt very strongly about doing some kind of a thank you, but also backing up our words with some action. So we hope that you feel of our appreciation and our deep gratitude. And I hope that will boost the morale of our teachers who are tremendous. They're just working so hard for us. Our administrators working so hard for us. Everybody's stepping up their game. Everybody is having to work extra hard, do things different ways. And so we hope that that bonus that just went through, that'll show up on your October 30th paycheck. So it's quick. We approve it on the 6th and it's in your bank account on the 30th. So we hope that that will truly show our appreciation and also give everyone a little bit of a boost in the middle of a kind of, sometimes, we feel the weight of COVID on our shoulders and all the things that it's taken away from us this year. We hope this is a celebration that we're actually be able to have something, positive come from it as well. You guys are awesome. You guys are awesome. We sure love everybody. Okay, now we're going to move on to our information item this evening. We have one, and it's the student participation during first quarter. And Rick Anthony's going to come ahead and lead us in that presentation.
Board President, board members, superintendency, thank you for the opportunity. I'm just here this evening to share some data for you, both on enrollment, and that'll be brief, and then moving to distance participation. I know the board has been very concerned and curious to have some data on our students who are on the distance modality, what type of participation rate we're seeing there. Enrollment numbers quickly. All of these numbers I have for you are as of last week, October 1st. Our district enrollment is down overall about 580 students from projection. We are declining enrollment as a district overall with just aging in our area, our boundary, but from projection. So in March every year, we put together projected enrollment. Right now, about 580 students down, elementary being the group that is down, 938 students there. Kindergarten and this is not unique to Granite, we're seeing this statewide. Kindergarten is the biggest grade that is down at 457 students from projection. Secondary's up about 358 students from projection, thus getting us to our 580. I want to take a second to now shift to distance and percentage there, but I want to tie this to a couple things. State statute R277-419 is a 180-day, 990-hour requirement law. From there, there's also USBE board rule. As they've grappled with the distance modality, they've provided us some vocabulary and some direction on how we should be thinking about attendance in the distance modality. And in that language, they use the vocabulary of learner validated program. So learner validated program is essentially online, distance, competency-based types of options for students. Doug is helping me out. We are going to need to adopt a policy around how we measure enrollment in learner validated programs. So Doug, you'll see that in the upcoming board meeting. I just want to draw that to your attention because it leads to the data that the systems we are using or will be using to identify participation are tied back to R277-419. So systematically, we're trying to make all of these things align. So our choice for learner validated measurement. So we have to have a measurement, and USBE gives us some examples of that. Essentially, the way that we see the best to do this is to use our gradebook data. Really just looking at our learner validated program or online or distance students and saying, from gradebook, we're going to run reports saying which students haven't done anything or don't have any scores in gradebook. So we know at a teacher level, a teacher knows very well who hasn't done anything in their class or hasn't submitted any work in their class. But globally at this level, that's challenging for us in that we can't go to every teacher and ask them, hey, how many students haven't? So we have to have a systematic way globally to get data around this idea. Ours is to look at gradebook and from gradebook say, okay, tell me in the reporting, tell me how many students have no scores entered. And we can set the times. We can set it for tonight's purposes. I've set it for the start of the school year until now. But we could report, and we plan to report. Principals will have the ability to pull this report for their school. We obviously have it for the district at whatever time interval we want to do so. For purposes of truancy, right? So it's a different thing, distance or learner validated program when it comes to truancy. For purposes of truancy, we plan to have this aligned very similar to our face-to-face. So after 10 days of nothing entered, we would start talking truancy process. And that sounds punitive, but it's important to note that that is not an automatic thing. Historically, truancy or not, what that is it's the school support team comes together with identified students who haven't been attending, whether it's face-to-face or now distance, and problem solve. Just because a student has missed 10 straight days or just because in distance they haven't participated in that time doesn't mean they're going to truancy court. There's a process that happens there, and it starts with the team at the school problem solving. So that essentially is how we are defining our learner validated measurement for the purposes of the law and board rule, but also from a pragmatic standpoint, how I'm going to share data with you on what we feel is happening with no activity by students. Here's just an example of the report that we put together. We blurred out students' names, and I won't stick to this. I just want to show you that we have a report that can be ran by school or district level. So I've separated the numbers here by secondary and by elementary. So in secondary, as of October 1st, I said in this reporting, tell me the number of students from the start of the year to October 1st who have nothing entered in gradebook, who have no scores in gradebook. And I want to know that for face-to-face students and distance students. And the reason why both is I thought it would get me more accurate data. Believe it or not, there are some face-to-face students who have nothing in gradebook, who have been attending, but have nothing in there. It's not a high percentage, but there is a percentage. So I wanted to say, okay, what is the difference between face-to-face students who have nothing and distance students who have nothing in gradebook for that period of time? And distance students were about 2% higher than face-to-face students having nothing. Not incredibly significant.
That kind of sounds like in secondary schools, that distance kids act very similar to face-to-face kids in terms of
Yeah, the
doing more.
difference is about 2% higher, the 2% higher number of students have no activity in gradebook for distance than face-to-face.
as compared to face-to-face.
As compared.
Okay.
In secondary, next slide. In elementary is a little bit higher, and I won't read the slides. I think you have a sense of how we're doing the math here. We're at about 9% distance students with nothing in gradebook, about 9% higher than face-to-face students. Elementary, I'm gonna disclose, elementary tends to have more face-to-face students with no scores in gradebook than secondary does. And the thinking here and talking around and saying, well, why would an elementary would a face-to-face student not have any scores in gradebook? I think the paradigm there is a little bit different than in secondary. I think in elementary school, teachers communicate student progress to parents in a lot more ways than gradebook. I think they send work home with students in backpacks that show scores or show proficiency levels. I think they use other tools like Fast Dojo to communicate these things. I think the communication is slightly different. I also think elementary parents are not watching scores like secondary parents are. And this kind of goes back to that paradigm of work completion. So when you're, anyone who's had a kid go through school, and when they go from one teacher to 7 teachers, they learn pretty quickly they've got to kind of help gap that and help their student make sure things get turned in. In elementary school, oftentimes with one teacher, that teacher walks over to the desk and gets out the work that was done and gets report back to parents. So there's a few different things there, or reasons, anecdotally, why perhaps elementary and face-to-face has a higher percentage with no grades or scores in grade. Overall, that's a rabbit hole, I know, but it's important to note. Overall, elementary distance students, non-participation is higher than secondary. Still there, about 9% higher. Hey, Connie.
I have a family in my neighborhood, the lower income family, and I did a socially distanced visit, but I told the dad how hard it is going to be for those kids to be behind. 2 of the kids are special ed. One little girl's very bright, and he you know, it's just a hard situation anyway, but his rationale is that teachers are just going to get them caught up. So would you, or a lovely elementary teacher somewhere, it's harder than just saying, oh, teachers will, I mean, this is not, please say that that's a really difficult thing to do.
Oh, absolutely. In my mind, there's 3 components to good learning: duration, the amount of time that I have, dedication of the teacher, how much time and energy can they truly invest? And then design. It's kind of this idea of work smarter, work harder, work longer piece. And it's not just a simple, easy thing to just do one of those a lot more. We're going to have some challenges with COVID and some setbacks, but we'll be up for it.
So can we ask what is the actual percentage? You tell us it's 9% higher. What is the actual percentage of kids who are not getting work?
I don't have that number in front of me, but I'll give you a ballpark. About 39% in distance have nothing in gradebook right now. But remember, that means 30% face-to-face students who go every day have nothing in gradebook right now. So, point again, this is why I went on that bird walk earlier with elementary. They tend to not record grades in gradebook as well as secondary do. And I tried to list some of the reasons
When
why.
and you said as well, let me tweak that a little bit. Elementary teachers seem to not enter data in the grade book as frequently as secondary teachers do.
Correct.
And so let's go to the next slide where we can talk about what interventions are going on.
Yeah, so
Excuse me, but what are the numbers for secondary?
much lower, like 10% and 12%. And I don't think it's a matter of there's a lot more elementary kids not doing anything. I think it's more the way elementaries report progress to parents is different than secondary. What that number has highlighted to us, though, is it just drawn to our attention. Wow, we've got, especially if we're going to start using this measure, we've got to emphasize, even though perhaps parents aren't calling for it to the degree that they are in secondary, we're going to have to emphasize updating scores frequently in elementary.
Now, it seems to me, I could be wrong, but as we've switched over proficiency-based to, they don't have to have 3 assessments in order to populate a grade.
Yeah,
and
recency now.
Yeah, and to me, I've seen more stuff, at least with my kids, entered in, so I don't know. Yeah, with my elementary kiddos.
And we know elementary and granted is much further along with proficiency-based grading than the secondary is.
Yeah, it's just interesting, and I don't know if that's the trend everywhere, but
That is different from what we were just saying.
Yeah.
Your experience.
My last piece here is, of course, we don't like that 2% and that 9%. So the next question is, well, then what are we doing about it? And quite honestly, what we're doing with distance doesn't necessarily differ much from face-to-face. You see teachers reaching out at their level. You see them identifying students and taking them to the school support team, who also makes interventions. But I just made a few lists here. You know, nothing that's going to be new to you per se. Emails, texts, class dojo messaging, phone calls. Home visits, though, I would say in 2020 are happening enormously more than in 2015 even. Some of that is tied to Title I opportunities and some of the initiatives and training around home visits, which seems to be catching fire amongst everyone to a certain degree on how powerful it could be building that relationship with.
I was with one of our principals, one of our elementary principals last week, and she had, where's Carly? Carly Chavez is where, she's not here in the room, but
Lake Ridge.
Lake Ridge. And she had a yellow notepad that she showed me, and there are 18 kids. She said, there's 18 kids that we're working on, and she said, yesterday I visited 8 of their homes. And so those are the kinds of things, but there's not a report that she updates regularly to us that says it's been 18 kids and now we're down to 15 kids and now we're down to 12 kids. So we're struggling with that, but that's what we're seeing going on.
Are you talking about asking for some type of report from each school?
Yes.
Well, we have in place, we've asked them to do that. What we haven't done, Terry, is we know that they are tracking those things and we're holding them accountable to show us how they're doing that. What we aren't doing is feeding that all into a greater system then Big Brother is watching all from one standpoint. Instead, we're using, for our level, just this metadata around what percentages are happening. But out at the school level, they know by
And
students.
so do they then report to the directors, their
Yeah,
specific
to their supervisor, what they're doing and how that's going.
And we set specific things that we'd like them to do, but we didn't want to make it extremely cumbersome. Task for the team because they've got so much.
So last year, we were pretty lenient in regarding grades and those.
Fourth term.
What's going to happen with these students this year? Are we going to be so lenient or what's recommendations?
We have, when you say lenient, we built into our system with secondary, but well, no, we built it across the board. It's secondary, I mentioned because it becomes about credit, progress towards graduation. The opportunity for incompletes. And we explicitly provided instruction on that and direction on that. We have not been explicit around incompletes this year as we were fourth term of last year.
And to your question, Terry, we don't intend to at this point.
Okay.
It's important to note that incompletes have always been an option for teachers. We just really emphasized it fourth term and haven't intended to do so at this time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. All right. Now on to our action items this evening. The first action item is a policy for the licensures for educators. And I believe this is a second reading, Doug, is that correct?
Members, Superintendent, this is the second reading on our licensure for educators policy. This is Article 8A33. You'll recall last month we discussed this policy. This is the one that allows the district to provide LEA-specific licenses to teachers who are not fully licensed at the state level or at the state office. And so the trade-off is that the district is required to then provide the program for helping these individuals be prepared to teach. We have a program in place. Human Resources has provided that program. That program goes hand in hand with these LEA-specific licenses. And then periodically we will provide to this board a list of educators for whom we will make a recommendation to USBE for LEA-specific licenses. This, again, has essentially replaced the alternative route to licensure program, and now it is being being administered at the district level as opposed to the state level. So there haven't been any changes from the last reading other than a couple of just typos in the policy. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions from anyone? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the second reading.
I'll do it. I know where my, I motion that we approve the licensure article for educators
As a second
as a
reading.
second reading.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second for this to approve a second reading of the licensure for educators. Board members, any other questions, concerns, or comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I was sweating that for a minute there.
All right, our second action of the evening is Mill Creek CRA. Dave Garrett is overseeing this one. Board members, I think you were provided supporting documents for everything. Dave, we'll turn it over to you.
Remember at our September 1st board meeting, Mike Winder came and presented information about the MedTech reinvestment area, which is basically the area around St. Mark's Hospital. We told you at the time we would go back and negotiate an agreement and bring the details back to you. So we have included that in your packets. It's an interlocal agreement which has the terms of this contract. Interesting, Granite actually, other taxing entities will be in it for 20 years. Granite negotiated a 15-year period. We have a maximum of $4.5 million that we'll put into it, and it saves us about $700,000 by shortening the time on it. We think it's a good contract, and we're happy. Board is in agreement if you do that tonight.
All right, board members, any questions regarding this MedTech or this Mill Creek CRA? All right, before I call for any motions, I have to recuse myself on this one. My spouse is actually economic director of Mill Creek City overseeing this project, and so citing a conflict of interest publicly, I'm going to recuse myself from the actual vote of this. But with that, if there's no further discussion, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make it fun as I can see. I move that we accept Mill Creek CRA as it was, as it's written up.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion on the table to approve the Mill Creek CRA MedTech area with a second. Any further questions, concerns? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously with a 6-0 vote. Okay, we'll turn the time now over to Martin.
Well, and Dawn, Doug? Board members, you'll recall a couple of months ago, we had a hearing regarding, a hearing for the owner of property regarding eminent domain action to acquire contractual property rights. As that hearing concluded, we took a moment and deferred acting on that. There's a question in the law whether or not when we reconsider that or bring that back, whether there needed to be another hearing. In the abundance of caution to make sure that the proper rights were extended, we bring that question before you again this evening, and we'll have another hearing as well to that question. But to set the stage for that, you remember Matt Anderson, of course, Doug Larson, and so, gentlemen, please.
Thank you. And we do have some members of the O'Brien family here who are going to speak to this matter this evening. Again, we're kind of rebooting this as a hearing so that we provide appropriate due process in all that we're doing. Ben, have you got the slides up? Okay, go ahead. So again, we're talking about property. Slide, Ben. We're talking about property that was acquired close to Skyline High School. You can see the map of the Skyline property there. Go ahead to the next one, Ben. As we look to obtain property there, we sought to obtain a property that you can see marked in the northeast corner of the property. We sought to obtain that property. We had a building site on which we had to build a new high school where there was also an existing high school, which is logistically very tricky. And so we anticipated that we would need to obtain that additional land. We also wanted to make sure that we had sufficient space for athletic fields. And as things progressed in terms of planning for the new Skyline High School, the footprint of the building itself was expanded. in response to community demands for a little different layout, a little different kind of school. Ben, next one. So we initiated the eminent domain process. Recall that the district can use eminent domain to acquire land at fair market value, just compensation, after certain conditions are met. And those conditions are statutory. The basic conditions are these: that there has to be necessary use for the public, for public use, excuse me. We have to demonstrate a necessity for public use. We have to take reasonable efforts to negotiate a settlement with respect to the property, again, providing just compensation. We have to allow the property owners to be heard, and we have to have approval from the governing body, which is you as the board members in the Granite School District. Let me focus for just a minute on the second bullet point there, the second condition, reasonable efforts to negotiate. So one of the things that that's required in the statute is that the governmental entity engage in reasonable negotiations to determine if there's a fair market value price that would be acceptable to the parties. We worked with the state, Utah State Property Right Ombudsman in order to negotiate a settlement in this case. We entered into a settlement agreement and purchased the property. In fact, we purchased the property after offering a fairly generous amount, is 10% above the appraised value, and we did that in order to make sure that the property owners were compensated appropriately. Now, Granite School District owns that property that you saw on the map just a second ago. Go ahead, Ben. With respect to that settlement agreement, however, there were some property restrictions, some narrow property restrictions to which the district was willing to agree. We knew that we had to maintain flexibility with respect to the site because there were a lot of unknowns. There were things that we knew we would need access. For example, the water district would need access. We would need access to various athletic fields, et cetera. And so we agreed to a limited property restriction to limit public access over approximately 150 feet of roadway. Now, as we discussed last time, you'll recall, as we discussed in our hearing last time, this really was the crux of the issue became what public access or public use meant. Okay, and I've included there the language of the agreement itself. I'll point you to the last sentence. The district shall post a fire lane. So we agreed to designate a roadway there on the north end as a fire lane with a sign stating that it is not open to public access and will take other reasonable measures to prevent public use of the fire lane. So public access and public use became kind of the touchstones for the subsequent discussion in this matter. Based on a differing view of what that provision of the contract meant, the O'Briens filed suit and argued that language actually should prohibit bus use or access on that lane, despite language of the settlement agreement. So even though the settlement agreement doesn't address bus use, that's what was claimed in the lawsuit that was filed. Okay, next one. Jump in when you want to, Matt. Okay, so there were several considerations that we needed to take, that we needed to think about after we had received notice of this litigation. In our estimation, or in our analysis, the litigation attempts to insert a property restriction into the settlement agreement that was after the fact, that didn't exist. In our view, the district buses driven by district personnel doing district business did not constitute public use or public access. In addition, fire lanes don't generally prohibit all kinds of other uses. We felt like we needed to maintain some flexibility throughout the negotiations. We anticipated access for, among others, the water district, as I mentioned, our own maintenance vehicles, public safety, emergency, medical, et cetera. And the O'Briens never raised concerns specifically over bus traffic during those negotiations. And so when we entered into this agreement, we entered it in good faith, without any sense that buses would be indeed restricted from that roadway. The district fully intended to design and operate the roadway in a manner that was consistent with the terms of the agreement. So that was with the gates, as we described last time. The language of the settlement agreement does not prohibit bus use, as I mentioned earlier. And the use of the roadway for bus traffic was required by the engineers, by traffic engineers. So when the traffic engineers came in, we had gone through several iterations of planning for the Skyline High School, for the adjoining buildings, outbuildings, and athletic fields. But once those things were set, then we had the engineers, the traffic engineers came in, and they're the ones who designed the flow, and that included that included bus traffic that needed to be able to access that 150 feet of that roadway on the north end. And so the current plans that we have described and have shown you in the past are what we consider to be the best and most efficient use for the district's land, for building and operating Skyline High School, and for the surrounding community. So that brings us full circle, essentially. We're back to the eminent domain process. As we indicated, the eminent domain process is something that we've initiated. It includes the process of finding a settlement. We indeed felt like that we had entered into a settlement in good faith. However, because of the dispute over the language of that settlement, it is clear that a mutually agreeable settlement was not necessarily reached, and there is still dispute over the restriction on that land. So now the next step in this eminent domain process, therefore, is once again to proceed to allow the affected parties an opportunity to be heard in a hearing just like this one tonight, to allow the board members to vote whether to authorize an eminent domain action. And I might add, as just the very last point, that even though, or regardless of how the board votes tonight, whether it votes to initiate an eminent domain action or it does not, we still intend to simultaneously continue to pursue mediation to resolve the dispute with the O'Briens. However, it is our recommendation that continuing the eminent domain process, continuing to step through that process, is in the best interest of the district at this time.
Yeah, I think you've covered it well, and I'll be happy to answer any questions, but I would just kind of.
If you can pull that mic or hold up your mic, I think you have a mic right there.
So,
Yep.
is this
Sorry.
better?
Yeah, we have to
Yeah.
speak loud for
Thank
our
you.
online listeners to hear.
I was just afraid I'd break out in karaoke if I held the mic like this, but I'll try it anyway. So it's important, I think, to think of this as an initial attempt to. We started this eminent domain process years ago, not months ago. And as Doug stated, there is a requirement in the statute that we negotiate, and we tried to negotiate, and we actually didn't think we were going to be able to come to a resolution. We did through the mediation process. But it's apparent from all these many signs since then that did not work. That the attempt to settle and resolve this throughout going through an eminent domain process simply was not successful. And you can characterize, you can explain that by multiple ways, but one of them would say that apparently the agreement that we reached was not an agreement. And regardless of how you characterize that, it's apparent from their litigation and from the continuing discussions afterwards that we did not have a successful settlement. And so now we're restarting that process that we started a long time ago, back in 2018, 19. And this is the vote for the board to give the district authority to carry out that eminent domain action. As Doug pointed out, that's not what we're going to do immediately. We're going to try to get this resolved. But we need to have that ability to complete the process that we started so many months ago.
And with that, actually what I'd like to do is invite any representatives from the O'Brien family, from the affected parties, to come up to the podium here and have an opportunity to address the board at this time.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and Granite District Board members. My name is Sean O'Brien, and I'd like to thank you for this opportunity tonight. I believe Matt Anderson was supposed to send me a connection for a phone, but we never got it. So I have my dad on speakerphone, and I hope, Dad, can you hear me now? We may not be able to get him tonight. I don't know, but got it. Okay. So my dad's 92 years old. He's healthy, happy, strong, but he couldn't make it tonight. Dad, do you want to go ahead and say what you're going to say tonight? I
am here.
Can you hear this? Okay. Go ahead, Dad. Go ahead and start.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I'm very discouraged and saddened by the way I've been treated by the Granite School District, your district. I have just returned from being in California for 4 months due to COVID-19 and medical problems that I have there. And I saw for the first time what Granite had done to me. Not only did you not keep your word on just having a fire lane, you have created a very wide thoroughfare to access the school, to use this as the main bus access, as well as the parking access, and access of all things for the LDS ball field. This is a direct violation of our sales contract. I literally cannot come in and out of my private lane without incoming tremendous congestion within 2 feet of my private entrance. We're side by side. After reaching an agreement with Granite, I was confident that I had no reason to doubt that Granite would be honest and honor the settlement agreement. I could not have been more wrong. We were promised no road throughout the negotiation of buying our property. And then at the last minute, when the contract signing was taking place, your people said, well, there may be a fire lane with a gate. So you put this in writing. And here's what you put in. The district shall secure such a fire line with a locked traditional fire exit crash gate at the entrance of Virginia Way. The district shall post the fire lane with a sign stating that it is not open for public access and will take other reasonable measures to prevent public use of the fire line. Now that you have violated the sales contract agreement, you then ask us to negotiate a settlement in order for you to take Section 4 out of the agreement. And furthermore, you said if we didn't comply with this request, you would just take it out by eminent domain anyway. You asked us to get our own appraisals. We did from a certified appraiser. But then you said, oh, our appraisal is not good enough. And your appraisal was better. None of this comes close to the compensation, the real damages that you have caused by the violation of the written and signed contract. After living and raising my children here for 40 years, this has always been a very special place for me. And by your dishonesty and blatant disregard of the sales contract, you have greatly impacted our privacy, our seclusion, and our property value. Over the 40 years, I have dealt several times with many members of the Granite Board. I know several personally, but they're the old school. I'm sorry that the old school is not there, because the new school has certainly not been honorable with me. End of conversation. Go ahead.
Thank you, Deb. From the very beginning, our main concern has been privacy and traffic and the possibility of having a road right next to our private lane. From day one, we expressed this concern to Don Adams, who has been your representative. Every step of the way, he said there were no plans for a road on the north side of the property. We repeatedly asked him for plans or schemes, and he would graciously respond by giving us different designs and schemes under consideration by the district. Never did any plans show a road along the north boundary. I'd like to remind the board that I have an email from Diane Pennington addressing this exact concern. Now, as you know, and for those of you who are watching live stream, Diane Pennington is the Executive Secretary for Legal Services, Policy, and everything legal for the Granite School District. She said, as I was trying to get a hold of Dawn in the last minutes of our negotiation, Dawn asked her to send this email, and I'd give you a copy if you'd like. It says, "Hi, Sean. Dawn asked me to send you these 3 layouts that are being considered for the Skyline High School rebuild. There are no plans to put an entrance on the north side of the property. Repeat, there are no plans to put an entrance on the north side of the property. Please let me know if this answers your questions or if you'd like to speak to Dawn again personally regarding this issue." Now, these are the last 3 schemes that I have. Scheme number 1 has the bus lane right off of Upland Drive, right in the middle. Scheme number 2 has it farther up, going down right next to the Skyline Seminary, and then scheme number 3 has the same location, but the phase 1 building is in a different location. Now, this email confirmation for us eliminated our main concern. So we sat down for final negotiation with Don Adams and your attorney. At that meeting, I asked Don if he would please put that in writing, that there would be no road along the north side of the property. He said to me, quote, "I can control what the Granite School District and the board does, but I cannot control what a third party does." And I said, "Oh, I don't understand what that means." He said, "Well, for example, the fire department, they may require that we put a fire lane there. We don't know for sure, but we have to put that language in." And I said, "Well, Don, I don't like that. We're developers, and the last development we did, there was a fire lane access to an apartment complex that we built. And 2 years after we built it, that fire lane became the main thoroughfare for the apartments." And I said, "There's no guarantee." And Don said, "Don't worry about that. I will put in exact language to prohibit that from ever happening." So Section 4 was written by Don Adams and his attorney, not us. He knew that our main concern was a road of any kind with traffic. Months after closing the deal, a neighbor contacted me and asked if I knew. By the way, there was never any discussion about buses at all, whatsoever. There were to be no roads. Months after closing the deal, a neighbor contacted me asking if I knew that Granite had now planned to have the main bus access to the school right next to our property. Additionally, I was informed that it would be used for parking access, school access, as well as the LDS access to the LDS stake ball field, which I've been told they've closed that off and had a sign, but we've had 40 cars a night going down to the stake ball field using that lane. About half of them go down the wrong lane and go down our private lane. So there's access happening right now. There is a sign that you can't read. It says no stake access, but the gate's open, so you can't read it. But even if you could and went around to try to access from the other side, there's a deadbolt on it. There's no way to access it. So that was just a farce, I think. So my question tonight for the board is, how long after the agreement had been signed, and at what point did you decide to change the main bus access from its original locations, the 3 last schemes I showed you, to the north end? And when that decision was made, did Don Adams neglect to tell you or caution you about Section 4 relating to the crash gate and the no public access agreement we had? Therefore, therefore you moved forward unknowingly. I think that's a possibility. Or did Don Adams, after hearing about the bus lane location change, did he in fact notify Granite District and the board about Section 4 of the binding contract and its limitations? If he did tell the board, then the board decided on its own to ignore the contract, in essence saying, we will do whatever we want, and we don't care about the contract we made with the O'Briens or their concerns about a road, even though we wrote it. We don't care. Our attorney says we can do whatever we want and simply take out any sections of the sales contract that are inconvenient for us, and we'll just do that with eminent domain. I'd like to remind you all what my attorney said in this last meeting 8 weeks ago. He said that if you attempt to take out Section 4 by eminent domain because you realize you made a mistake or because your plans have now changed, and if you are successful in that attempt, why would anyone ever trust you, Granite District, and make a contract with you in the future? Because you could ultimately take out anything that is inconvenient for you just by using eminent domain. In fact, in the future, you could negotiate and promise to the other party anything they wanted, secretly knowing that in the end, you could just take out the inconvenient clause by imposing eminent domain. I'd like to propose that since you created this problem, you be honorable and abide by your contract, as opposed to your silly different interpretations. You know darn well the correct interpretation on that. We feel we have been bullied and trampled on throughout this entire process. We are only here tonight because you ignored a clear contractual obligation. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Doug and Matt. Any further follow-up comments?
Yeah, I don't want to go piece by piece and respond to everything that's said, but I will say a few things. I obviously was not present for all of the discussions between Mr. O'Brien and Don Adams, but I'll tell you, we were not able to get to an agreement during those discussions, and we weren't making any progress. And in fact, we suggested that we go to mediation, and the O'Briens consented and requested the ombudsman to be involved, and that's where we started the negotiations in full. Now, I can't say as to what kind of conversations happened before then, but I know what happened in that mediation. There was no discussion about bus traffic. Don was consistent and persistent about saying we needed to keep our flexibility because we didn't know how the final plans would come out. We specifically agreed to not allow public access on that fire lane, and that's all we agreed to. And so if you look at the contract, you've seen the language, we have an obligation to put a sign up to prohibit public access, to put up a gate to prohibit public access, and to take other reasonable measures to prohibit public access. And that's fully what the district intended to do. Now, I understand what happened with the O'Briens. I'm guessing that they didn't think about buses when we were at the discussion and during that period and when we wrote it up, but that's...
Because every design showed bus access not anywhere near. How would we possibly think about bus access? Never part of the discussion. No road or road was the... No roads. And Don said, well, you may have to have a fire access road. Crash gate, nobody would ever use.
The contract specifically states that there'll be a fire lane and that it will not, and we will not allow public access. That's what we agreed in the contract.
Okay. Now I have in my notes from last month, so correct me if any of these numbers are wrong, but we have tried to come to the table to negotiate. So do you have numbers in front of you to be able to validate what I'm about to say?
In my head, generally.
Okay, so I have the O'Briens valued this parcel, this,
Parcel.
I don't, the ability to drive there, across that
And again, it's
lane.
not, it's the restriction that they're trying
Right.
to enforce, right?
So they valued that at $387,000. We valued it at $33,600. So we offered them $75,000, and they came and counter offered $367,000. So we counter offered back to them $110,000, and they countered back to us at $332,000. So essentially, we're looking at a $222,000 difference of opinion as to a value of the right for this piece of property we're talking about.
Right, and I would emphasize as well, I mean, that the cost of the property, Don, you might check recollection, but about $1.6 million. And so, again, what the statute requires is just compensation. And that's what we intended to provide through mediation, through the settlement agreement, was just compensation. And again, indeed, that went above and beyond what they had even, their own appraisal suggested was the value of that property. So, you know, we, in.
So to be clear, this is talking about the second round.
Swing the microphone around. There you go.
You're talking about the second round of negotiations, which happened a month or two ago. And Doug's talking about the original round of appraisals where we
Sure.
offered them, we had an appraisal, they had an appraisal. The appraisals were different. We offered them 10% above their appraisal.
Yeah, I understand. I guess what I'm getting at is that we have come to the table and we've tried to negotiate.
Right,
That,
and
I
so,
think-
and so what,
And our numbers are just, I mean, there's a very big difference of opinion on the value.
and I
the
wanted to
dollar
follow
amount.
up to make sure that we understood. So, that was part of the settlement agreement. We did purchase the land from them. So all we're talking about now is that restriction.
Correct.
And the idea is that there has been a valuation done, an appraisal done related to that restriction itself. That's all that we're talking about here. And those are the numbers that you just
So
mentioned.
these numbers are to basically deal with the restriction.
Precisely.
And there's a $222,000 difference of opinion of what that restriction is worth. Is that? Okay. So but there's an obvious difference of opinion. I mean, okay.
Right. We,
Okay.
But I think you're right. The settlement discussions are, as you stated, there's a $220,000 difference as to the value of that change.
Okay, I just wanted to say, I mean, these conversations have happened in negotiations. Board members, we'll open it up to discussion for the questions and comments you may have, did you want to finish up on anything before board discussion?
No, I'm happy to answer questions, but.
Go ahead. Oh, sorry, Todd, I didn't call on you. I thought you were going to just go.
I know that we've been in negotiations, but having been involved in legal disputes for nearly 30 years, I am a believer in negotiating, and I would recommend that we further negotiate at this time.
Well, I think there's evidence that we have tried to negotiate. And according to what you said, we will continue to try to negotiate. But going down this process of giving you the opportunity of going down the eminent domain road starts the process so that we keep going. But I certainly would agree that we need to continue to try to negotiate. But we also need to have this other avenue so that we can proceed and accomplish what we need to for the public high school that is going in there. And right now, it's been quite a while that we've been working on this, so I encourage us to continue to negotiate and try to come to a settlement that's fair for all parties, but I also think that we need to give you that opportunity to go down the eminent domain.
I just want to clarify that I don't believe we're under any time constraint to go down that eminent domain pathway. And my experience is that when certain pressure points and stresses are taken away from the parties or removed, sometimes effective negotiation can be facilitated. And that's why I propose that we try again before we continue down the eminent domain path.
Okay, another Chris.
I just feel like these numbers are so far apart that how much negotiating, how long would that even take? I mean, months to even get to a closer number. I think we should still try to negotiate. I don't think that's off the table, but I mean, this is a huge disparity back and forth the gap's not getting closer. That's my concern.
All right, let's have Connie and then Nicole.
Okay, one of the greatest things that I have learned in my 12 years as a board member is that there's two sides to every story. And I appreciate Mr. O'Brien and his father speaking to us tonight, but there are still two sides. And as a board member, I feel like I have a responsibility to consider the money that we have to use for our students it's a trust that the people that elected us gave, a trust that we would take care of that money in a responsible way. And I would urge continued negotiations, but feel like we do have to take care of that money in a reasonable and responsible way.
Nicole.
My questions were just, Mr. O'Brien said that right now he's encountering extra traffic. Do we not, because we were assured that the ball field is being accessed a different way. Is that road not in yet because of the construction? Why are they able to access it now? Why do we not have a gate, at least to fulfill that part of the contract?
We have a main entrance to the parking lot, and then we have the under construction access point that's also construction access. The contractor's in charge of keeping that gate closed when they're not using it. I can and will continue to follow up with them to make sure that they're operating that gate, but that is a construction access off of the roadway at this time. If others are breaching that after hours, we can check again for locks and security, but we are certainly not encouraging the use of that for anything but the construction access.
Is there access already to the ballpark from a different way? Can they access that?
To the south of the ballpark, that is the main parking lot entrance.
Okay. Who has locked, who, is that our access or is that the LDS
I'll
church
have
access?
to drive up and I will drive up and check out the current situation tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to suggest another, if people are still using that when they're not supposed to contact the stake president and have him contact bishops and say, this shouldn't be, you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing by using that road right now or ever.
Yeah, I'll again contact the principal, find out what traffic measures they're taking from the school perspective and see what's going on up there.
So, and my other question is just so I can get an idea of the timeline. When was it that we did say, okay, there does need to be a fire lane there? in regards to when this contract happened?
I think the timeline in general, let's call it fall of 2018 for property acquisition discussions and negotiations. If you remember, the community came to us and strongly requested that a more traditional school design occur. That occurred, I want to call it in November 18, maybe December 18. Revisionary plans were generated maybe in April. Traffic studies were done spring, summer of 19, and the engineered recommendations came out at that point in time. So there was quite a lag between this negotiation, the community coming to you as a board and asking for a more traditional school design, the traffic engineered study taking that new design into account, and how traffic would need to flow. So there, late summer of 19 would be my off-the-cuff response to when the city came together and said, yes, that's an acceptable traffic plan from our perspective.
Letter from Diane Pennington, August 27th. At that point in time, there were no plans for bus access. John Adams knows never a plan for bus access there. The main concern all along, not have a road there.
That is a big thing.
But for him to couch the view that it was all part of the plan is not.
Okay, board members, any other comments or questions? If not, if I don't know, I think I know some of your feelings, but we can open it up for a motion or have further discussion. Where do you want to take this?
Before you make a motion, if I
Yeah,
might just say one
please.
more thing, and
Go
that's
ahead,
just that, just put it in perspective, the district has authority to exercise its eminent domain power. We have initiated that process, gone through that process, and really what the district has to do in order to actually take the land is to pay just compensation. So the negotiation process and in paying for the land initially was what we considered to be the alternative to eminent domain. Since that has not necessarily been fruitful, now we believe that there is an effort to try to obtain additional compensation. But that, once again, part of the eminent domain process, if negotiations are unsuccessful, if a resolution cannot be reached, then the eminent domain power is still available to the district, and we just need to complete that process.
Sure, I'm out of order. The resolution was done. 4 months later, you contract. Eminent domain is for property. It's not for contract. Never been done in the United States as far as property. Property was a done deal. You guys can't take back. Saying that Section 4 is a matter of opinion, that's just not. Never designed to be a main thoroughfare. The reason why people keep using it is because it's like 50 feet wide and very inviting, landscaping on both sides. Very inviting. Fire lane with craftscape and nobody used. So to say it wasn't settled is not true. It was settled and we were fine. It wasn't until 4 months later we found out from a neighbor you changed everything. So you're just not being truthful. I don't know who you are.
All right, thank you. Board.
That's why I propose that we not press with a legal proceeding that doesn't have a deadline, and we attempt to further negotiate.
How would we state the motion to proceed with eminent domain?
Yeah, it would be just that,
It's the approval to file eminent domain
you would,
action.
right, you would
And I move-
authorize.
I authorize our representatives to proceed and file for eminent domain on this property.
We have a motion.
And encourage us to continue negotiating.
We have a motion and a second on the table for the approval to file eminent domain action. Further discussion from the board. All in,
I just want to make one
Oh.
comment.
go ahead, Todd.
I'm a little concerned about this idea that we have maybe 100 buildings and maybe 1,000 over the fence neighbors, and I just want to be sensitive to the precedent that we might be setting or the signal that we might be sending. So I again would urge you to not go forward with something that doesn't have a deadline on it, and that we further negotiate.
Now, question, Todd, because you keep saying there's no deadline. Is there, I mean, what is the deadline, I
Nothing
guess?
in eminent domain that says that an eminent domain proceeding has to be brought in a certain period of time.
I think the bigger question, timing wise, is we still are building a high school. And that fire lane is the bucks, with bus access in there. If it's not going there, where is it going, and how does that affect all of the plans that have been done and redone and reevaluated and evaluated and reevaluated? Skyline's, been the plans have been drawn long enough. So I don't know that it's a question necessarily. Well, and you can jump in here.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is I feel like there's got to be some timeline, because if we have to put it somewhere else, then we have to know that sooner rather than later, because every time that, if we keep delaying this, we're not going to be able to change our plans. Am I wrong on that? Do we need to know this at some point? I mean, what's the point that we need to know this, that if we have to change them, we can?
You're correct in your statements that sooner rather than later, as the next phase bids in spring, and so we would be best served by knowing where we're going before then.
And what is the cost if we do end up having to move the fire lane? Do we move the fire lane, or do we just create a different bus access?
I would say that you have to have the fire lane. That's where the state fire marshal and others, the county fire marshals, et cetera, have requested separated access to the building. And
So, and
then
the
the traffic engineers would have to opine and coordinate with the city and their network improvements. I don't make the decisions of where these go. We follow recommendations from other professionals. So we would have to solicit their opinions.
So, and the O'Briens have said, okay, I mean, they were okay with the fire lane, with the understanding that there would not be public access. So it's just what we refer to as public access, and that's where we're not coming together, correct? I'm understanding that right. So with that then, I mean, we need to know at some point, we have to know in order to, that means that we would have to redraw architectural designs and whatever designs we'd have to have the city come back in, redo the traffic pattern, reevaluate all of that, correct?
Correct.
So, and that takes a substantial amount of time.
Months.
It takes, sorry?
Months.
Months, okay.
And money.
So when you say, Todd, that there isn't a timeline, to me, there is a timeline. Are you not seeing this as well, Todd?
I don't disagree that there has to be a decision made at some point, but I don't get the sense that a few months is going to be detrimental to the construction project.
I also would like to make a comment, and I certainly appreciate that the O'Briens, Mr. O'Brien and your father have come and made comments, and it was referenced that old school type school boards and new school type school boards. I just want to make, at least my feeling is, we have done all that we can and will continue to do all that we can as a school board to make good on people's concerns. And we've done that as we've had to improve property for other people who've lost property for other schools. And so, and we've encouraged you to do everything you can to continue to negotiate. So I feel like whether we be old school or new school, we have done and will continue to do all that we can to be good partners in the community and to do our best to make fair for everyone. So I just think that's important, that we've done it and we'll continue to do all that we can, but we also have an obligation to go forward with the school.
Any further comments? All right, so we do have a motion and a second on the table for the approval to file eminent domain action. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 6-1 with Mr. Zanger being the opposed vote. Thank you, Mr. O'Brien, for being here this evening with us. We'll turn the time over to Martin for a superintendent report. Thanks, Matt and Doug, by the way.
Board members, we had a patron contact us regarding the block schedule, the AB calendar that we're in the middle of. Actually, we're not in the middle of, we're in the middle of the first quarter of. And this patron, to his credit, had counted the number of A days and the number of B days per quarter. And there's actually a significant disparity.
Distance days, not
Distance days, yeah, which, yeah, there's the same number of A days as there are B days, but there are significantly more B distance days than there are A distance days. So we hadn't looked at that at all, but John and his folks went through that, and in fact, that was the case across the year. They've come up with a pretty simple solution for that. The board does not act on designating days, A days or B days, but we thought that 2 weeks from now, we have a study session. We'd prepare the calendars with the correction that actually does balance those out in terms of distance days. So there'd be the same number of distance days A and same number of distance days B. And John will bring that on the 10th and share that calendar with you. And absent any questions to the contrary, we'll send that out then to the schools and make that, the secondary schools make that change. This is not an issue in the elementary schools. Second point, the bond sale is tomorrow morning at 9. You'll recall that we decided to do that earlier rather than later, given the impending election. It sounds as though $23 billion worth of other people had the same idea we did, and that's the biggest bond sale, single date. Our bond is not $23 billion, but nationwide, all $23 billion worth of bonds will be sold tomorrow. And so that will take place, and then we will let you know, board members, the outcome of the sale and the interest rates that we were able to get there. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Connie.
Okay, just wanted to mention that my good friend Connie Burgess made some little comment about it would be fun to visit all schools. And since I only have a couple of months left, we've started that process, and we're happy to visit schools. And I am in awe of principals, and as we walked through the halls and watched people teach, I am in awe of teachers. And I just want to comment that we visited Westlake Junior and Hunter Junior, and both principals talked about how great the kids were being during lunch. And as we walked up, and Tyler opened the door and said, the kids spread out all over this great big grassy place. And as we walked into Hunter Junior, there was a circle of kids on the lawn, and they were all socially distanced. There were, hello? Is that a hint for me, Ben? Sorry, it's not gonna work. But anyway, lunch tables were out and they were social distanced. We also visited Hunter High and South Kearns, and we're impressed. Dawn took us around the addition to Hunter, and it is totally amazing. I mean, I wish I could have taught. When I think of my room at Granite High School or West High School that was like 100 years old, and then I see these beautiful new buildings. We're doing amazing things, but I am a retired teacher. I just want to mention that I had a very excellent conversation with a parent from one of our local high schools that was closed. And he wanted to know about the numbers of, you know, the 15 and then you close the school and things like that, and who made that decision. I said the school board does. And we talked about all the different things that there were to mitigate, to keep kids safe, that we're doing everything we can that we know of to keep kids safe. And he said, well, if it's so safe, why don't you just keep the kids at school instead of closing the school? And I said, I wouldn't do that to teachers. And there comes a point, if parents knew their children were in danger, if their kids were like smoking or drinking or doing things that they shouldn't be doing, that parents would step up and they would be all over it. And I said, and yet, when I visited a high school, that particular high school, the second the kids were out the door, the high school kids ripped their masks off and were walking shoulder to shoulder. They were shoulder to shoulder eating lunch outside. And this is what I suggest. It's like, what can I do? And I'm so glad PTA, I love you. Okay, I was PTA president. Well, I was in PTA for all the years my kids were in school. But this is what I suggested to that parent. And this is before we heard that there were floral companies that were selling prom corsages. And I had at least 3 people talk to me about seeing things online that schools were doing proms with twinkle lights in someone's backyard or somewhere. And I suggested to this parent that this is a concern. We want to keep teachers safe, principals safe, bus drivers, lunch ladies, custodians. We want to keep all those people safe, but when they're outside of school and not being careful, that maybe it would be a good idea to either contact his local PTA and say, can we do some kind of a parent education program, or the community council figure out some things, because outside of school, children and families and communities need to understand what the protocols outside of school are, that you wear a mask, that you social distance, that you wash your hands frequently, that you don't go to big groups. Even outside, there is still danger. And I just think that there needs to be responsibility on the side of the school and responsibility on the side of parents having those important conversations with their children and understanding that the numbers at some of our high schools are not where they should be and in our communities. So, and I'll be gone in 2 months, so I guess I can say that, huh? Thank you.
Thanks, Connie.
I was
Chris.
gonna say thank you, dear. But anyway, that's what I have to say.
I'll make mine shorter, Ben, so we can leave tonight. I've had the chance to visit a couple more schools, and I think I'm just really amazed by our teachers, because they are pulling it together. They are doing such a good job, and I'm so thankful for them. They're keeping our kids mentally healthy by being there, and I can appreciate that as a parent. I also think that our school staffs are just stepping it up, and I hope we don't get burnout soon. So I'm hoping our little bonus helps, but I sure hope that, there comes a time I have to even tell my daughter, I make her put her phone away at night, and I hope teachers are doing that for themselves and not making it so hard on themselves. I know teachers are so internally driven, that I hope they're taking care of themselves. That's my wish for them.
I got to go, I figured out a way to be able to go see a Taylorsville football game, and it was by going to the Hunter game where they played Taylorsville and sitting on the Taylorsville side. So I did get to go to the Hunter Taylorsville game, and it was fun because it was Hunter's homecoming. Got to visit with some people there, specifically some administrators. And I want to say thanks to the coaches, the phenomenal job that they've done, those who have kept the kids motivated and practiced in a safe way and responsibly and help these kids. Because I think sports, we want to be able to do this safely, but we recognize that this is a big motivator for a lot of kids to stay in school, to be in school, to get good grades. And, props to the coaches who have done a phenomenal job in keeping their kids safe and practicing and doing that in that way. I just want to also echo what Connie is saying, that we felt strongly that we wanted to get kids back to school because that is the best place for them, but we have to have community cooperation as well. It doesn't do us any good to be having these safety measures in school when we don't abide by them outside of school. And, I have even taken my kids out of a couple activities because I didn't feel comfortable with the safety measures and that they went to the extent that they needed to. And, this is a time for all of us, everybody in the community, to step up and just to do our part, because we do want to keep our kids there, and but we also want to keep our teachers safe. That is absolutely our number one priority with that. So, so please, everybody, do your part. That's all.
I have enjoyed visiting the schools also. I've been to football games, and I applaud the principals and the assistants as they work with the students, and I'm truly impressed with the students there at Cottonwood. I have a grandson playing, so he to go and see the students with their masks on has been a real thrill for me. And going into the schools and seeing how willing the students are to wear their masks and still be able to associate with friends. I'm grateful. I say thanks to the football coaches, to the principals, to those who work so closely that we can have extracurricular activities and still maintain a sense of unity there, but wearing the masks. And just thanks to all of our workers, the para-educators who are helping so much in the schools right now. It's a thrill to watch them. Thanks.
Yeah, I've had opportunity to go and volunteer at schools. That's been a fun experience. I've done playground security and lunchroom. And today I read Harry Potter for the first time in my life. And so it was fun. And I just want to, I'm afraid our last meeting, from some of the emails, some of the teachers and those people felt like we as a board thought everything was going good and everything was okay and there were no problems. And I just want to assure the teachers and administrators that as a board, we realize that we have big issues still before us, and we're doing all that we can here to help them in any way we can. But as I've gone around, the teachers have seemed good, but some have expressed a concern for burnout. Principals have expressed a concern for burnout for their teachers. And I even mentioned to a principal today, I'm concerned about burnout for our administrators too. And so please, whoever's listening and whoever hears this, we realize that everything is not perfect. We wish we could do more, but we're here to do all that we can. And for me, it's just been a great pleasure to go in and see all those young people at junior high and elementary They're glad to be back, but we're not there yet. There's a lot of work to do, but we appreciate all the efforts of everyone that is doing what they're doing.
Okay, so it's been a busy couple weeks for me. I visited all but one of my schools, and it's very easy to see that what's happening in schools is everything but easy. People are working incredibly hard. As I go, this first round of visits, I always like to meet with the principals. Purposely kind of gave a little bit of a buffer to the beginning of a crazy year. And as I go and I meet with the principals towards the beginning of the year, this year in particular, I go and sometimes they're in their office, but most of the time they're not. And so one particular visit stands out because I was shown to her office. I'm sitting there and waiting for her to come in. She literally came running in and she said, "Sorry, I have someone out today," and I was just doing reading groups. And here she's the administrator in the building. And so our administrators, our teachers are working so incredibly hard, and we just appreciate everybody's efforts coming together. And together we'll make it through. I don't know how long COVID's going to last and all these restrictions, and there's hope on the horizon, and we always have to hold on to the hope. Sometimes hope is the only thing to get us through something hard. But I know together, day by day, we'll make it through. For those not listening and tuning into the beginning of the meeting, I just want to reiterate, Friday distance days are not going anywhere. So for those who weren't tuned in yet, as long as we have dual modality, those Fridays are going to stay as they are. There's also an interesting rumor as I did my school visits that dual modality teaching is here to stay forever. And no, that's not true either. We know it's a very difficult thing we're doing right now because of COVID, but we don't have any intention of carrying that through post-COVID. Speaking of post-COVID, another thing, as you kind of learn common threads as you visit a lot of schools back to back, and one of them is that we're learning lessons now through COVID, and some of the things we're learning are going to carry over post-COVID. We're going to take positive things from a very negative situation, and we're going to still have those. I have a couple junior highs principals who said, "We don't know if we're going to use lockers," and you can argue whether or not to use lockers or not, but that's not the point. The point is our administrators and our teachers are already, they have their eyes wide open and are looking for lessons that we're learning now on what's actually maybe simpler. Doing things a new way sometimes is a better way. And sometimes we just have to be forced into doing it a different way to see that it's a better way. And so that's something that's really popped out to me as I visited with a lot of administrators, is we're already learning some very valuable lessons going forward. Overall, our case numbers, comparatively speaking, are actually pretty good. They are, we're creeping up, as is a lot of the people areas around us, but I don't know what Granite is doing well. And I want to just give a shout out to all the people who are helping it go well. We have safety equipment for individuals in place. We have cleaning things. Our board continues to be committed to following the recommendations from our health experts. We're not health experts, we're education experts. And so we're going to continue to do that and be aggressive with quarantines. I think that is a key that's actually helping our district numbers stay low, is we're being very aggressive with quarantines and following those health recommendations. So it's probably a combination of the mask wearing, distancing when possible, cleaning, recommendations. I don't know what's making it work, but I know it's working. So let's just continue to keep working together. I was on a USBA region call, Utah School Board Association. Our professional development as board members, they usually have a conference in January. They still are having it instead of Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's only Thursday, Friday, and it will be virtual. So the dates for that board members are January 7th and 8th. That is a Thursday and a Friday. They'll have one virtual class, I believe, Thursday, 2 on Friday. Just so you know, we do have professional development also as board members, although that has also been altered this year with COVID restrictions. but we're trying to get in as much as we can. New board member training will still happen. They're looking at scheduling days for that, for their new board members as we have election. It's an election year and we'll bring new board members onto our board. I had the privilege of attending a Kennedy Junior High turnaround exit party. And so Kennedy Junior High has officially exited turnaround, and that was really fun. Mary Basso was there as principal to celebrate with her faculty, and Dr. Bates and I got to speak just a few minutes and thank their faculty. It takes a lot of work to make a school run. It takes a lot of extra work to get a school out of turnaround. So we thank everyone on Kennedy for those efforts. Had an opportunity to go to Granger's homecoming game. They played Taylorsville. And it's interesting because I was there and I'm a Granger Lancer. And I was sitting right next to my husband, who's a Taylorsville Warrior. And so it was fun. And Granger won. So there you go. But I also love Taylorsville because, you know, I just do. Just earlier in the meeting, I just want to say one more thing about this 1% bonus to contract employees and a $100 bonus to hourly. By no means do we want to have this bonus mean that we're trying to overshadow or hide the extra work that you're doing. We know your workload is greater, so we just please know that this bonus is not holding the candle to the extra hours you're putting in. But if we can separate and just acknowledge the absolute gratitude we have for the work that you are doing, for the extra workload you're taking on, to keep our kids learning and growing, and that's what we're here for. We're here to educate the kids. And I think everyone in the room, you know, can nod their head. All the hard work, all the hard decisions, everything we do is to help our Granite kids and our Granite families succeed. And so I just wanted to reiterate our appreciation from the entire board for the hard work and great work that you're doing. Sorry, I kind of took a little extra few minutes, but we got to get Ben Horsley home, so. I don't know, maybe I talk faster. I don't know.
I move that we adjourn.
All right, move to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Come on and come up and say.
Oh, I just wondered, does that increase for hourly include substitutes?
Yes, it does.